All right. Chapter 41, Orion. I know, it's the only picture I could really find. What's the other one? There was a chick, but I was like, that's not right. She was naked, but we're not going to go. We're not going to switch everything up like that. Orion's always been a dude. As far as I know, maybe today he'll change, but oh well. Orion, 41. Orion, a hunter of Boeotian Hieria, and the handsomest man alive. See? The man. Yeah. Was the son of Poseidon and Ariel. Coming one day from Hieria in Chios, he fell in love with Merope, daughter of Dionysus' son, Onopion. Onopion had promised Merope to Orion in marriage if he would free the island from the dangerous wild beasts that infested it, and this he set himself to do, bringing the pelts of Merope every evening. But when the task was at last accomplished and he claimed her as his wife, Onopion brought him rumors of lions, bears, and wolves still lurking in the hills, and he refused to give her up, the fact being that he was in love with her himself. B. One night, Orion, in disgust, drank a skinful of Onopion's wine, which so inflamed him that he broke into Merope's bedroom and forced her to lie with him. When dawn came, Onopion invoked his father Dionysus, who sent satyrs to ply Orion with still more wine until he fell fast asleep, whereupon Onopion put out both his eyes and flung him on the seashore. An oracle announced that the blind man would regain his sight if he traveled to the east and turned his eye sockets towards Helios at the point where he first rises from the ocean. Orion at once rowed out to sea in a small boat, and following the sound of a cyclops' hammer, reached Lemnos. There he entered the smithy of Hephaestus, snatched up an apprentice named Cedelion, and carried him off on his shoulders as a guide. Cedelion led Orion over land and sea until he came at last to the farthest ocean, where Eos fell in love with him, and her brothers Helios duly restored his sight. C. After visiting Delos in Eos's company, Orion returned to avenge himself on Onopion, whom he could not, however, find anywhere in Chios, because he was hiding in an underground chamber made for him by Hephaestus. Sailing on to Crete, where he thought that Onopion might have fled for protection to his grandfather Minos, Orion met Artemis, who shared his love of the chase. She soon persuaded him to forget his vengeance and instead come hunting with her. D. Now, Apollo was aware that Orion had not refused Eos's invitation to her couch in the holy island of Delos. Dawn still daily blushes to remember this indiscretion, and further boasted that he would ride the whole earth of wild beasts and monsters. Fearing, therefore, that his sister Artemis might prove as susceptible as Eos, Apollo went to Mother Earth and, mischievously repeating Orion's boast, arranged for a monstrous scorpion to pursue him. Orion attacked the scorpion, first with arrows, then with his sword, but finding that its armor was proof against any mortal weapon, dived into the sea and swam away in the direction of Delos, where he hoped Eos would protect him. Apollo then called to Artemis, "Do you see that black object bobbing out in the sea far away, close to Ortega? It is the head of a villain called Cadalon, who has just seduced Opos, one of your Hyperborean priestesses. I challenge you to transfix it with an arrow. Now, Candion was Orion's Boeotian nickname, though Artemis did not know this. She took careful aim, let fly, and swimming out to retrieve her quarry, found that she had shot Orion through the head. In great grief, she implored Apollo's son, Asclepius, to revive him, and he consented, but was destroyed by Zeus's thunderbolt before he could accomplish his task. Artemis then set Orion's image among the stars, eternally persuaded by the scorpion his ghost had already descended to the asphodel fields. E. Some, however, say that the scorpion stung Orion to death and that Artemis was vexed with him for having amorously chased her virgin companions, the seven Pleiades, daughters of Atlas and Pleion. They fled across the meadows of Boeotia until the gods, having changed them into doves, sent their images among the stars. But this is a mistaken account, since the Pleiades were not virgins. 3 of them had lain with Zeus, 2 with Poseidon, 1 with Ares, and the 7th married Sisyphus of Corinth and failed to be included in the constellation because Sisyphus was a mere mortal. F. Others tell the following strange story of Orion's birth to account for his name, which is sometimes written Euron, and for the tradition that he was a son of Mother Earth. Harius, a poor beekeeper and farmer, had vowed to have no children, and he grew old and impotent. Yeah. When one day Zeus and Hermes visited him in disguise and were hospitably entertained, they inquired what gift he most desired. Sighing deeply, Harius replied that what he most wanted, namely to have a son, was now impossible. The gods, however, instructed him to sacrifice a bull, make water on its hide, and then bury it in his wife's grave. He did so, and 9 months later a child was born to him, whom he named Euron, he who makes water. And indeed, both the rising and setting of the constellation Orion bring rain. Footers. 1. Orion's story consists of 3 or 4 unrelated myths strung together. The first, confusedly told, is that of Onopion. This concerns the sacred king's unwillingness to resign his throne at the close of his term, even when the new candidate for kingship had been through his ritual combats and married the queen with the usual feasting. But the new king is only an interrex who, after reigning for 1 day, is duly murdered and devoured by Menenides. The old king, who has been shamming dead in a tomb, then remarries the queen and continues his reign. 2. The irrelevant detail of the Cyclops' hammer explains Orion's blindness. A mythological picture of Odysseus searing the drunken Cyclops' eye has apparently been combined with a Hellenic allegory. How the sun titan is blinded every evening by his enemies, but restored to sight by the following dawn. Orion, the dweller on the mountain, and Hyperion, the dweller on high, are in fact identified here. Orion's boast that he would exterminate the wild beasts not only refers to his ritual combats, but is a fable of the rising sun, at whose appearance all wild beasts retire to their dens. 3. Plutarch's account of the scorpion sent by the god Set to kill the child Horus, son of Isis and Osiris, is the hottest part of the summer, explains Orion's death by scorpion bite and Artemis's appeal to Asclepius. Horus died, but Ra, the sun god, revived him, and later he avenged his father Osiris's death in the original myth Orion. Orion, too, will have been revived. Orion is also, in part, Gilgamesh, the Babylonian Hercules, whom scorpion men attack in the 10th tablet of the calendar epic, a myth which concerned the mortal wounding of the sacred king as the sun rose in Scorpio. Exactly at what season the wounding took place depends on the antiquity of the myth. When the zodiac originated, Scorpio was probably an August sign, but in classical times the precession of the equinoxes had advanced it to October. 4. Another version of Orion's death is recorded on one of the Hittite Ra's Shamra tablets. Anat, or Anatha, the battle goddess, fell in love with a handsome hunter named Aquat, and when he vexatiously refused to give her his bow, asked the murderous Yatpan to steal it from him. To her great grief, the clumsy Yatpan not only killed Aquat, but dropped the bow into the sea. The astronomical meaning of this myth is that Orion and the bow, a part of the constellation which the Greeks called the Hound, sink below the southern horizon for 2 whole months every spring. In Greece, this story seems to have been adapted to a legend of how the orgiastic priestesses of Artemis, Opis being a title of Artemis herself, killed an amorous visitor to their islet of Ortega. Ortega. And in Egypt, since the return of the constellation Orion introduces the summer heat, it was confusingly identified with Horus's enemy Set, the two bright stars above him being his ass's ears. 5. The myth of Orion's birth is perhaps more than a comic tale modeled on that of Philemon and Biolacus, and told to an account for the first syllable of his ancient name, Euron, as though it were derived from Orion to urinate, not from Euros, the Homeric form of Oros, mountain, yet a primitive African rain-producing charm which consists in making water on a bull's hide may have been known to the Greeks, and that Orion was a son of Poseidon, the water god, is a clear allusion to his rain-making powers. 6. The name Pleiades, from the root play, to sail, refers to their rising at the season when good weather for sailing approaches. But Pindar's form, Pleiades, flock of doves, was perhaps the original form, since the Hyades are piglets. It appears that the seventh star in the group became extinct towards the end of the second millennium BC, since Hyginus says that Electra disappeared in grief for the destruction of the house of Dardanus. Orion's vain pursuit of the Pleiades, which occurs in the bull constellation, refers to their rising above the horizon just before the appearance of Orion. All right.